and transcription. ROV operators positioning support frameworks around 6 Nyomron 14N radial engines on GiantThe 400. Cleaning 8N propeller blades on GiantThe 400.
Final inspection of clean GiantThe 400. True condition now visible without marine growth. Planning restoration approach.
Structural integrity assessment. Deep sea endings out.
Divers in commercial diving suits installing reinforcement cables throughout GiantThe 400 wing structure.
Underwater cameras capturing GiantThe 400 breaking free from Mediterranean seabed after 80 years. Massive sediment cloud erupting.
4 heavy lift vessels positioned in square formation above GiantThe 400. Computer-controlled winch systems sync.
Transport barge flooding ballast tanks, submerging to 50 feet depth, creating an underwater platform beneath GiantThe 400. Precision positioning using GPS and sonar.
Specialized 400-foot transport barge approaching suspended GiantThe 400. Custom cradle built for air. GiantThe 400 being carefully lowered onto submerged barge cradle. Wing supports contacting first. Fuselage set.
Transport barge departing recovery site with GiantThe 400, heading toward restoration facility. Escort vessels surrounding. Surface crew lowering network of 80-plus reinforced steel cables from heavy lift barge. Attachment points distributed across GiantThe 400.
Close view of 6 Nyomron 14N radial engines as gigantic.
Crew attaching massive flotation pontoons to GiantThe 400 wings and fuselage, preventing aircraft roll.
Transport barge entering Danube River with GiantThe 400, navigating inland waterways toward German restoration facility.
Massive mobile cranes positioning around GiantThe 400 on barge. Specialized lifting equipment for 180-foot wingspan. Planning lift to land-based facility.
First glimpse inside GiantThe 400 cargo bay as water drains. Corroded German military vehicles.
Discovering fabric-covered sections of GiantThe 400 fuselage aft of cargo bay. Fabric long deteriorated, leaving bare framework.
Carefully opening corroded cockpit door of GiantThe 400. Accessing flight deck. 4 crew positions.
Examining GiantThe Horn Gel Fuse Subsynthesis Chamber Sexy and Galaxy Chat for Zincs and Produce Cooling Center.
Documenting GiantThe 400 electrical wiring throughout airframe, 24-volt DC system, generators on each engine, wiring completely corroded, full rewiring required.
Explosive ordnance disposal team carefully removing live ammunition from Gigantic 400 cargo bay and defensive gun positions. 80-year-old munitions still dangerous.
Okay, this Jeep checks out. Let's move to the next pallet. Did you scan these ammo crates?
Just finished, all accounted for. This next one's tagged special equipment.
Examining aft fuselage fabric-covered sections of Gigantic 400. Fabric completely deteriorated. Cleaning tubular framework in aft fuselage where fabric covering deteriorated. Removing rust from steel tubes. Preparing for fabric replacement.
Based on these XRF readings,
The depth of saltwater corrosion here.
Luftwaffe aircraft specialists examining Gigantic 400, comparing to rare wartime photographs, only 230.
All right, these Nomron 14N engines, they're seized solid. Complete rebuilds required on all 6.
Let's start with outlining the removal sequence from the Gigantic 400.
Pumping residual aviation fuel from Gigantic 400 wing tanks, petroleum products still present after decades, environmental disposal, vapor control.
Gentle pressure washing of Gigantic 400 exterior. Removing marine grout from a new aluminum skin.
Pressure washing interior of Gigantic 400 cargo bay, removing sediment, rust, oil stains, preparing space for vehicle restoration, decades of accumulation.
Cleaning massive 10-wheel main landing gear of Gigantic 400. Removing rust from struts, hubs, brake assemblies, tire mounting points. Washing 3 vertical stabilizers and rudders of Gigantic 400. Cleaning control surface hinges. Removing marine growth from distinctive tail configuration.
Cleaning 5 defensive gun positions on Gigantic 400. Removing rust from gun mounts, turret mechanisms, ammunition feed systems.
Studying cargo loading systems in Gigantic 400. Ramps, tie-down points, vehicle securing equipment.
Cleaning 6 engine cowlings on Gigantic 400, removing corrosion from engine nacelles, exposing Nomron radial engines, detailed cleaning of cooling fins.
Washing elevators, rudders, and ailerons of Gigantic 400. Cleaning hinge mechanisms, control horns, cable attachment points.
Cleaning remaining windows on Gigantic 400, cockpit windscreen, side windows, navigator positions, heavily salt-etched plexiglass.
Cleaning hundreds of access panels on Gigantic 400. Removing corrosion from fasteners, hinges, inspection doors throughout airframe.
Flushing fuel lines and tanks in Gigantic 400, removing contaminated fuel, sediment, preparing systems for restoration.
Flushing hydraulic lines in Gigantic 400, removing contaminated fluid, cleaning brake cylinders, simple system maintenance, cleaning corroded wiring and electrical components throughout Gigantic 400, though most will require replacement, documenting original routing.
Applying desalination chemicals to Gigantic 400 aluminum structure, removing salt from metal pores, preventing continued corrosion, weeks-long process. Patching holes in Gigantic 400 aluminum wing skin, replacing severely corroded panels, maintaining original gauge aluminum, skilled sheet metal work. Rebuilding leading edges of Gigantic 400 wings where engines mount. Reinforcing engine mounting points, critical structural areas. Restoring trailing edges of Gigantic 400 wings, aileron attachment points, control surface hinges, maintaining aerodynamic profile.
Repairing tubular steel fuselage frames in Gigantic 400, welding cracked tubes, replacing corroded sections, maintaining structural cage.
Restoring crew entry doors on Gigantic 400, hatches, ladders, internal access ways, emergency exit provisions.
Restoring 5 defensive gun positions on Gigantic 400, turret mechanisms, ammunition feed systems, armor plating around positions.
Rebuilding cargo bay floor in Gigantic 400, reinforced structure for vehicle loads, new plywood flooring, tie-down anchor points.
Restoring large clamshell cargo doors on Gigantic 400,
hinges, latches, seals, making doors operational for demonstration, side-loading capability.
Reinforcing GiantThe 400 center wing section, strongest part of structure, fuel tanks located here, attachment to fuselage, critical load path. Rebuilding cockpit structure in GiantThe 400, framing for windscreen, side windows, instrument panel mounting, 4 crew positions. Detailed documentation of GiantThe 400 cargo bay interior, 36 foot long by 10 foot wide by 11 foot high space.
Restoring 3 vertical stabilizers of GiantThe 400, unique triple tail configuration, rudder attachments, structural integrity of tail boom.
Rebuilding ammunition feed chutes for GiantThe 400 defensive guns, belt-fed mechanisms, spent casing collection, complex gun systems. Rebuilding elevators, rudders and ailerons for GiantThe 400, aluminum framework, fabric covering, control.
Recovering aft fuselage of GiantThe 400 with new aircraft fabric. Laced to tubular framework, doped.
Running new control cables throughout GiantThe 400, connecting cockpit controls to all flight surfaces, proper tension and routing, manual control system.
Rebuilding 6 engine mounts on GiantThe 400 wing leading edge. Reinforced structures supporting 1,500-pound engines. Vibration isolators.
Restoring aluminum engine cowlings for 6 engines of GiantThe 400. Cooling air intakes.
Rebuilding fuel tanks in GiantThe 400 center wing section, 3,200-gallon total capacity.
Applying fuel-resistant sealants and conducting thorough leak testing.
Installing new fuel lines from tanks to 6 engines on GiantThe 400. Gravity feed system, shut-off valves, fuel filters, period plumbing. Installing new plexiglass windows in GiantThe 400, cockpit windscreen, side windows, navigator positions, period correct optical quality.
Listen.
Navigation equipmentation from cockpit quickly help you note the space.
Final rigging of flight controls on GiantThe 400. Adjusting cable tensions, checking control surface travel, ensuring proper movement. Installing interior panels throughout GiantThe 400, cockpit walls, cargo bay lining, insulation, period-appropriate materials and colors. Running new electrical wiring throughout GiantThe 400, following original routing, 24-volt DC system, junction boxes, circuit protection.
Installing new hydraulic lines for GiantThe 400 brake system, steel tubing, flexible hoses, reservoirs, simple hydraulic system.
Removing all 6 Nomomron 14NN engines from GiantThe 400 for individual restorations. And
Rebuilding cylinders for GiantThe 400 engines. Honing bores, new pistons and rings, valve work.
Repairing crankcase for GiantThe 400 engines, French aluminum casting. Checking for cracks, bearing surfaces, structural integrity.
Rebuilding superchargers for GiantThe 400 engines, single-stage units, impeller wheels, housings, boost control, power at altitude.
Rebuilding carburetors for 6 engines on GiantThe 400, fuel metering, mixture control, throttle linkages, period French design. Rebuilding oil systems for GiantThe 400 engines, sumps, pumps, filters, coolers, lines, lubrication for radial engines critical.
Installing first rebuilt Nomron engine on GiantThe 400 wing. Mounting to engine mounts, aligning, connecting systems, 1 of 6.
Fitting restored cowlings to rebuilt engines on GiantThe 400. Cooling air baffles, exhaust systems, access panels, proper engine cooling.
Connecting all systems to installed engine on GiantThe 400, fuel lines, oil lines, electrical, controls, exhaust, methodical process.
Installing second rebuilt engine on GiantThe 400. Progress through 6 engine installation. Each engine 48 hours of installation work.
Third engine being mounted on GiantThe 400 wing, port outer engine, team becoming efficient, systematic installation procedure.
Fourth engine going on to GiantThe 400, starboard inner position. Half of power plant installation complete. Aircraft taking shape. Fifth engine being installed on GiantThe 400, starboard outer position, only 1 engine remaining, nearly complete power plant.
Applying corrosion-stopping compounds to GiantThe 400 structure, protecting exposed metal during restoration process, temporary preservation. Final engine installed on GiantThe 400, all 6 gnome-roan radials now mounted, 5,940 total horsepower, impressive sight of 6 engines.
Completely rebuilding fixed landing gear of GiantThe 400, main gear bogies with 10 wheels.
Installing new wheels and tires on GiantThe 400, period correct tire sizes, 10 main wheels. Inspecting minimal hydraulic systems in GiantThe 400, primarily for brakes, no powered flight controls, simple system compared to modern aircraft.
Complete laser scanning of GiantThe 400, capturing every detail of a 180-foot wingspan and fuselage.
Identifying armor plating added to GiantThe 400, protecting fuel tanks and crew positions, weight penalty but necessary for survival, combat modifications.
Examining the unique triple tail configuration of the GiantThe 400. 3 vertical stabilizers. Structural reasons for this design include
finding emergency equipment aboard GiantThe 400, life rafts, fire extinguishers, first aid supplies, survival gear for crew.
Locating defensive gun positions on GiantThe 400, 5 machine gun positions, nose, dorsal, beam, tail position.